We do technical analysis and chat about markets here and educate folks on the show. And last week, we were talking about the relationship killing markets right now. And I explored the basis and rationale for a drop in the gold prices, a correction, and since last week, gold had its biggest drop in 4 years. So we timed that one perfectly. We do that quite a bit on the show, actually. And in today's show, we're going to be doing a drop-in clinic, live drop-in clinic for traders, and taking your questions to help with the markets, and we'll interact a bit. I've also got technical analysis requests coming in live from the audience, so there will be trade setups in today's show. We'll be talking about risk management principles and making sure that you become a better trader, because I don't do financial advice, but on the show here, none of these things are financial advice, they're just good techniques. And we'll be reviewing LivePerson a little bit here in today's show as well. It's one of the stocks we like to talk about on the show. And I have a goal in the chat box right now, which is that I'll ask Jamie what he thinks about LivePerson's AI growth. And we will find out what he thinks about LivePerson's AI growth in this video if we get to that chat goal at some point during the show. So that's fun, take part in that. And we have, of course, got a lot to talk about because gold did correct, but it's an intersection with the rest of the markets that has got people a little bit spooked this week, and we've seen the AI bubble news story surfacing everywhere. Like they had a whole special on it in yesterday's Channel 4 news here in the UK, for example. And it's a big question. Will the AI bubble burst? But I have a slightly different perspective on all of this with regards to LivePerson as well. And the kind of question is, are people just a bit panicky ahead of the NVDA earnings coming up next month, of course? It's a big question to ask. I think that's probably one of the first places that we can jump into today's show. As I say, it's great to have everybody here in the audience. We'll do another goal here as well for some LivePerson technical analysis with the audience if we reach our current goal, which is pretty cool. So we'll maybe get some LivePerson TA as well. This is the gold chart just before we drop out of this. Has this correction been enough? Will there be more blood on the golden streets? This is Eldorado streets are awash with blood right now. So what's the big thing here? Well, for me, this pivot point at around about 4,100, where the 236 is quite important. It is quite important. And while it's below that, I'm actually going to remain kind of fairly bearish overall. I do think that there could be a move up to test around about 4,200 against the area really where we discussed this whole thing last week. So last Wednesday was about was about here, right, on the chart. And then we had this formation happen at the top with the double top. You could call it an Adam if you liked, or something like that. And then price breaking down below that pivot point was where we saw the kind of the big move happening, right? So that remains kind of like the bullish bearish pivot for me just now. Make it back into the range up above, I think here might also be associated with like various macro news stories. For now, this here might have some time to play out. As you can see, huge shock to the gold market, and unlike equities and things like that, it can't just rebound back with like great earnings or something like that. So if there is a potential trend change happening here, then I think it's probably, one that's got more to give in it, but it has a story that goes along with it. Because last week we talked about, and you need to watch last week's show to understand what the story is, but obviously this ties back into traditional markets as well right now. And if we look here, we can see something kind of similar, like a sort of doubly top type shape there, sort of on NASDAQ futures just here. But what we've got is some confidence risk came back into the markets, and as prices drop down, then there's a degree of kind of confidence, this kind of abstract inverted confidence, where people know that the prices were higher in the past. So the idea of can prices go higher becomes true. They can't go higher. They were higher in the past. That kind of feeling builds in a degree of kind of confidence where it eventually becomes people thinking, oh, it's good value and we'll buy it because it's a good investment because it will go higher, right? That type of confidence is all a story together. And a part of that then, of course, is NVDA, which is obviously really important in NASDAQ. So this here has been a relatively negative day for NVIDIA. Go back to NASDAQ, you can see it's been a relatively negative day for NASDAQ, and we will be making our way over to Bitcoin in this show, and it's been a relatively negative kind of day for Bitcoin over the last 24 hours. And that's the whole kind of symbiosis between these things is happening at once-ish. But it's never been the case that, the safe haven of gold was used while there was a blow off top happening in stocks, so to the point that the gold prices led the decline. There's a lot of fear around about bubbles, and I wanted to present a kind of counter story for kind of now until the end of the year, right, in terms of the thesis about this is a big AI bubble, to say, what if it was just a big gold bubble? And this symbiosis that's happening here is affecting the way that people are interpreting everything else in the markets, right? So this is gold again, and this big drop that happened in gold kind of signals a bunch of things, but one of them it's not so that it's like because there's an AI bubble that the price of gold dropped. And then you kind of, if you remember last week, I talked about things in a circle where each element fed into the next, the snake eating its own tail of markets, how there was a symbiosis across all things. And it's kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy in a sense. Like, you feel gloomy, but if you go out for a walk, you'll feel better. And this gloominess is making you not want to go out for a walk, which is making you more gloomy. So if we change the behavior, it'll change the thinking. And it's like, well, the behavior of gold changed and the thinking in markets went to AI bubble kind of quite rapidly. And I thought, well, that's a little bit unusual. And NVIDIA is, of course, a big part of this story because it's got earnings coming up soon. Let's see, when is the date of the earnings again? It's like the 29th or the 19th or something like that. Yeah, the 19th of November. And the estimate for their revenue is 55 billion. Let's call it 54.55 billion. If we go back to the previous earnings, it was 46 billion. So they're looking for it to go up by 20% in one quarter. It was 44 before, 39 before. So it went over 10% that from one quarter to the next back then. And then people look at these earnings and they look at what's coming up in the economy and they think to themselves, well, if NVIDIA's weighted so heavily in NASDAQ and SPX and NVIDIA drops because its earnings don't achieve what we've set out for, that would be bad. What have we said that earnings are going to be? Well, we said that earnings are going to be 55 billion, which is an awful lot more than 45 billion. So, oh my goodness. Little reminder to folks, of course, is that if we look back over time here, NVIDIA has been such an incredible success story. We have to go all the way back to 2022 to find earnings which had any negative surprise at all, and it wasn't on the revenue aspect because that's just always been blowing away the predictions every single time, as you can see here as I go through the list of earnings results recently. So surprise, sometimes surprising them by the amount of like 2 billion and stuff like that, and the surprises. What if there's more to come? what if there's more to come? These earnings results here would kind of show a lot of things to the overall market in terms of their ability to survive the headwinds of tariffs and economic uncertainty. You know, for example, continued expansion in demand for their products, and we'll also hear what they think about forward-looking guidance and so on. So this is kind of interesting stuff. Interesting is the word. We've got to our goal here, which is fantastic. So we're going to have to start another one, which is going to be, of course, for those LPSN technical analysis section, where we'll put a bit more into it, a bit more polish on it, perhaps. So this is so NVIDIA. This big part of the story about is there an AI bubble, and the part of that story is kind of self-inflicted wound of having put on an earnings prediction of 55 billion in the run up to it. Are we feeling a bit antsy in our pantsy as gold then drops, and the feeling of that gets displaced and onto equities, and then they look towards NVIDIA again, and then they think, oh, we did this to ourselves, and a downward cycle of psychology emerges as the price of NVIDIA is dropping during that day. And if we just kind of look again to how markets then performed, just to bring up the NASDAQ here, and you can see that this drop down as being kind of a little bit scary, because if you think about this picture that I'm drawing on just now, where you look back to like a Wednesday or a couple of Wednesdays ago, and you think about that high, and you look at the price action since, and then you remind you by going back to the gold chart, then you'll see that this, essentially, this is the psychology that exists inside the equities market right now while it's testing that area. So obviously it's peak fear when you're looking at the NASDAQ chart, and it's testing around about these areas and trying a bit lower, right? So that explains what's going on in the market and the psychology and why it's all happening. And do I think NVIDIA can beat its earnings again? I think it probably can, right? So I'm not particularly scared right now. And there's a feeling behind the scenes of like a lot of people using stories to kind of sell a different narrative. You know, AI bubble coming in as they're offloading their gold positions makes an awful lot of sense for the likes of Jamie Dimon to be doing, perhaps, who's also talking about the AI bubble as he's offloading his gold positions. I mean, he isn't talking about the gold bubble. In fact, I've seen more adverts on YouTube for buying gold recently than I have for buying NVIDIA chips. Do they even advertise? I don't know if they have to any longer. So my feeling on this is this was one of kind of reserved optimism, kind of calm optimism, because we haven't actually kind of broken low quite yet. And then if we go over to SPX to give us a kind of a flavour for how the day is shaping up here, coming into close, by the way, half an hour left on the day, and you see that it's just trying to find its feet here, having come down and filled in this gap that was left with the move up that got you that right hand side of the Adam and Eve on NASDAQ, for instance, or this one right here in SPX. And it's back here having tested that gap that was created during that and then pushed up to the top side of the gap. If the week finishes and stays above the 50 simple period moving average, I'm fairly relaxed about the until next week's show. Of course, I'm keeping my eye out for like 6545, as I said. You know, that's kind of a tipping point on this one for now. But I don't want to get caught into some psychological trap of thinking before there has been an actual full-on downward correction that it's happening like today, like with the AI bubble type chat maybe pushes. And then that brings us on to talking a bit about my thoughts. I'll bring up the Bitcoin chart here. On Bitcoin recently, it's been following the NASDAQ chart an awful lot. So if I just zoom in, which one's following which one is a decent question to ask. As you can see here, perhaps this moved a little bit earlier than the NASDAQ, having traded downwards today on it, but spent the last sort of 16 hours going sideways inside this box on Bitcoin. So maybe it's this one that's given us an indication first, and you often see that with crypto. So looking again to crypto to see if we can get some tailwinds as get like pushed forwards, some positivity, upward movement on this one before we perhaps see it on the other charts, which would be interesting as well if that was the case. But it might be that they need to walk hand in hand. In the meantime, what we have with crypto here is it's been respecting these drawings, these purple and red boxes I have on my chart extremely well recently. Movements down below, this basically this chunk of price action is going to take it back down to testing this purple box again in a sort of generally downward looking trend with this slightly erroneous price action that pushed outside of it. But of course, success at maintaining price, within this purple box, not taking out this section of price action, is going to give it an overall upward look, where perhaps things are starting to the weakness that here is starting to lose its downward momentum, perhaps, with this push up. One thing that push up does show us is that there is some willingness to push prices forwards in moments of market bullishness. It's like it's kind of like being frothy, but is it when there's been a range established towards the downside that it's trading back into? So it's as a retrace, the movement down has been it's had liquidity involved in it, but a lot of that's been liquidations, and the short side could easily be caught off guard with movements back up the way. So I am looking towards this with some eyes towards the prize, but the way that I'm thinking about this is really between these areas where the white space is. Of course, inside I look to see how it responds at like the midpoint. Frequently you'll see the midpoint of these sections, these boxes, being extremely important. Resistance here, support here, and so on. So I do that, and I do trade as well inside these things. But as I'm looking between them, it's this movement between the key sections, and anything we find in between that really stands out for us. Because we've seen real low liquidity, sort of low resistance, really fast moves between those sections, and those are really kind of important. So what the takeaway is that as I look towards this area of open space and here on the charts, if we do see Bitcoin moving up the way here, that might be a precursor for traditional markets moving up tomorrow, and I'd be kind of looking at that, if not tomorrow, like over the course of the week, if there is a resurgence towards the top side. If not as well, I'm also looking towards these lows, because as you can see, the boxes work very, very well as giving us an indication as to there it could go to that one. So this is why last week I told people to screenshot the screen when those were up so you could see what the prices were, and yeah, that remains the case with that. So that's where we are now. Someone made it to level 2. That's amazing. We've got 1 out of 10 towards our live chat goal. That's cool. We don't need to get too deep into technical analysis on that if people are not wanting it. But if people are wanting it, then get involved in that one, because that's what you to get involved in. I've got my questions box open. I've got a few questions here, and one of them actually is interesting because there's news out here today from Google that they have kind of done their first ever proof that they have an algorithm which is actually better on a quantum computer than on a traditional one, doing a process 13,000 times faster that they think is going to really help with drugs research and discovering new materials. So that's kind of news out today. When I think about the quantum stocks and stuff like that, I think about how it's really super exciting technology, but of course it's not proven yet, it's not applied yet. But do I think it gives companies a real competitive advantage if they move forwards? Like, yeah, I do, but there's short term and long term as well. We've got like in the short term, you have ChatGPT releasing a new browser which could really dent some of Google's browser downloads, which removes some access and use, quite a lot actually, of the Google search engine, which could impact their bottom line. So is Google under threat from OpenAI right now? Does that put Microsoft in a stronger position? How does Microsoft feel about that, with Bing being a big part of its business model? And how's that going to intersect with their business right now? It's like a here and now threat, because that's the other news of the last 24 hours. ChatGPT releasing a new browser. So if that's the current news there, perhaps we should pay some attention to that in the here and now before the actual advantage comes for Google and other quantum computer folks. Got Minner here asking, do you rely more on indicators or candlesticks for entries? i.e. MACD cross but no bullish candlestick, would you enter? I think that's a really great question. Do I rely more? I think I rely more on a sort of, maybe perhaps if I could introduce a third element to that question from Minner. He's asking, do I rely more on indicators or candlesticks, and say that I also then would look at the market structure as we're doing here for, on these charts, and asking, like, for instance, you've got indicators here showing you a golden cross coming in to retest it, but then that's trend, it's not really played out, has it? We've got golden death cross following up then thereafter. So is the indicator alone good enough? And like here we've got like a little, let's find a bad doji or something like that. You can pick and choose things and find bad examples for them, but when you stack them together and it's happening at a point of real interest in the market to you because you've identified certain levels and areas of resistance and support and so on, I think that has a big influence and factor on how you're looking at things. Obviously, in a sort of the scenario which exists perhaps on LivePerson, evolving kind of potential here for like an abandoned baby candle. If it finishes the rest of the week strong, then last week's candle would look like a bit of an abandoned baby on the chart here, something that Jimmy was pointing out to me. Shout out to Jimmy, TradeSpotting. So do I rely more on that candlestick from last week to base my entry, or do I look at a number of factors together? And it's funny because I'm always looking for a number of things. So I wouldn't say I'd rely on one more than the other. If you have to strip everything away though, then you can still trade off of just one thing alone. But then obviously you're going to have to see how that pans out for you. So I use these other factors not necessarily to give me more confirmation for a trade, like confirmation bias, but often look for these factors to give me a reason not to trade as well. So I'm looking to see whether we're getting conflicting signals, and you wouldn't necessarily buy on some particular indicator reading unless you'd looked at the other ones. Sometimes it's necessary. So the accumulation distribution indicator, for instance, will have instances where if it was a gap up day, but the day itself was a negative candle, so you have an open which is higher, creates a gap, and it trades back down into that gap, leaving a negative on the day. The accumulation distribution indicator will have a lower low reading on it, despite the fact that the price has moved up, and it kind of creates a conflict that requires you to look at more what the input is coming into. So anyhow, great question, great stuff, cool, excellent. So I've got my question box open there, folks can get involved in that. And we'll come back to it. Remember, we did achieve our goal from the first half of the show about getting Jamie's opinion on LivePerson's AI growth for its products. We'll see what his feelings are on that in today's show, and we'll get on with our analysis and show, and take some more questions and chat from the chat box as well. It's a drop-in session. I've been looking to see what people have been talking about in the chat so far, if there's been any major stress in markets for anybody with if any gold bugs or anything got caught offside last week, and I've not seen too much stress from people in the chat, which is quite good. So AI bubble fears and all the rest of it, not getting people too scared. This is good to see. You've got questions, and one of them was take a peek at AIRE if you like. So we'll take a quick peek at AIRE. It's a question from Sauced Food Cart. That's cool, and I've got Jamie with me here as well to talk about LivePerson's AI growth soon. This weekly chart here shows that this thing has some big moves on the week, but it's obviously a penny stock and it's struggled to maintain life above $1. It's had negative earnings just as a sort of headline for a while, so it might be one that you need to be a bit more intimate with to understand exactly what it is that's going on here. These big surges in buys, pulling back, big surge, pull back, big surge. It sure has an accumulation type of read to it. Yeah, it's kind of like it's definitely a volatile penny stock with aspects of like people buying some and then dumping it back into the market, and then bigger and lower liquidity. Obviously, the volume of coming up in those days. Let's just see to be sure. Yeah, like, someone comes along, buys a lot, and then distributes it back out on everybody's faces, buys a bunch, distributes it back out, buys a bunch, distributes it back out. But that's quite cool if it ends up with them operating this thing up into a profit. It's clearly being kind of manipulated in that way. Movements between certain areas obviously is what you expect, even in situations where price is being pushed around a bit. So like, bear in mind the previous levels for resistance, support and resistance, like just obvious examples like here, whereas in the past, resistance, support, resistance, and then we've struggling at that now, and the prices rolled over when they went over above it. Look at different Fibonacci levels, and let's see if it starts to get a proper trend.
Looks like a meme stock to me. I mean, the peak to the low in that move was, the drop was twice the range of the move to the top side. And then the recovery was a 50% fib, and then subsequent to that, it's gone to golden
like this
786.
Just Jimmy's just talking about, like, there's this move up here, which was like this move down here, and the thing has got a degree of kind of shadiness to it. Well, it's a penny stock that could have news and things, events associated with it. It could be something that's got a future. It could be on the way out. Who knows? Like, it's not losing massive amounts per share, but I don't know how many shares it has or anything else. So cool. I've got Jimmy with me now here to ask that question. Just a second. I need to get you up on camera.
What is the question exactly?
Are you on camera yet? Yeah, I think this is you getting the camera now. Right, sweet. The question. Yeah, was so Jimmy, what do you think about LivePerson's AI growth in its products and services that it's selling to its clients?
Yeah, Lipson's AI growth. Lipson is.
You're not on camera. You just have to sit close to me.
Okay, like they do in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So Lipson's AI growth. Yes. So Lipson is known as like a legacy software as a service company. They're providing chatbots. That's what it's known as. And it's pivoting to an AI-led company. Now, it's not just hype. It's a revenue recovery mechanism. They're quite frank in earnings calls about pointing to Gen AI adoption within their current customer base to provide contract expansions, which adds to average customer revenue, and that's a strong focus for the recovery. So it's a revenue recovery mechanism, AI. It's not hype, it's actual real hard cash, and it's recurring revenue, which is exactly what people look for when they're worried about bubbles. They look for real enterprise value, actual economic value, and they see that through recurring revenue relying on actual Gen AI features. So that's a strong focus for the company, and I think that it's not just hype, it's not just the sector and it's doing well, but it's specific to LivePerson and part of their growth as a company. And so AI is partly that story of adoption. It's like three stories woven together. It's the adoption of those AI features, and it's the financials, because those AI modules, they're not freebies. Each one of those costs money. That adds to the annual revenue per customer. That boosts each contract. Each expansion is another step on that recovery. And when LivePerson's so tightly strung, just one big new customer could make a huge difference but they don't even need that because their current customer base can just really increase their adoption of these new features, which has been happening like a consistent boost even when the sales aren't coming in. So it's a financial story as well as a story of adoption. And it's impressive that Sabino and Collins don't just talk about AI hype in earnings calls, but actually focus on the specific features, and how they're increasing the revenue and the bottom line. And then the third part of the story is that innovation piece, because they've got this new product called synthetics, right? And a lot of people aren't really talking about this, but I think it's absolutely brilliant and could be fascinating. It positions LivePerson as a really innovative company, straight off the block, first mover advantage in something that's going to be huge. It's effectively a synthetic test layer for enterprise grade AI. So basically it's customers that are designed to stress test your bots. And that means that you'll get, they'll be hammering your bots with thousands of different questions in the amount of time it would take you to think of one, pointing out all the weak spots, and then you're able to deliver and deploy a much better first iteration of your product, which is such a huge advantage to serious companies, right? They do not want you, me, or Grans pointing out what it is that's wrong with their website. On that point, LivePerson, I think they really need to update their website, don't you?
Yeah.
But back to the story at hand. This is the...
Well, no, the story at hand is, what do you think about AI, LivePerson's AI growth?
Fantastic, because it's not just a question of hype. It's a real revenue recovery mechanism that it's there in the accounts. They're not freebies, so they bolt onto every contract, and that there's an innovation piece with the synthetics, which are going to be part of all deployments of new enterprise grade AI systems. So it's both a revenue recovery mechanism and real part of the story. And we were talking about how some people, cynical people, will look at the market and the growth of AI and talk about the circular accounting with NVDA, OpenAI, and Oracle. And we were saying, well, sure, there's a natural truth to the fact that when the railways expand, the steel companies do well.
Yeah, there's an equilibrium that occurs in all markets, and it's been a big part of my shows the last couple of weeks. So I've been talking about this circle of the interdependency and showing Bitcoin moving down as NASDAQ moves down, as gold moves down, and moving up in lockstep as well. And it's not a massive conspiracy. It's the natural equilibrium that occurs within markets. And there's a synergy that happens there, which is, of course, why 120 years ago, Dow was talking about looking at things like expansion in the industrials might lead to expansion and so on in other sectors because of this interdependency, and it's how the world works. So it's not really much of a wonder that AI is growing in the same sort of a way. It's less of a threat, perhaps, than other value chains, because this one is really a nascent growing thing, and it will actually have more competition as time goes by anyhow.
Yeah. So that's just a perfectly working market at the time. You have to be careful from monopolies, but I'm not sure we worry about circular accounting. And sure, it might be a bubble, but we'll wait for a blow off top because bubbles tend to explode. So Lipson's AI growth, it's the backbone of the recovery. It's the future of the company. It's not hype, it's data driven. This is LivePerson, right? Delivering synthetic enterprise layer testing for your new huge massive revenue generating product. They've got massive capability increase with their partnership with Google. Their go-to market spans massively, and all of this come on the back of LivePerson, not just some startup that's managed to get a little bit of funding and some good couple of coders working for it. Like that matters when 95% of the work can be done by AI in the first place. It's sensible people that understand the market and know the problem. And the problem is that you need data-driven, trusted answers from a company that's worked in regulated spaces like healthcare, telecoms, and banking for 2 decades. And they can combine that with trusted, useful data from how you interact with an AI chatbot. And they've the perfect company. The synergy there is absolutely fantastic. So AI for LivePerson isn't just part of the brand. It isn't just the sector they work in. It isn't just replacing some of the staff at the company. It's actually what AI is doing in the real world right now. It's improving the way companies make money, increasing their productivity. And LivePerson are doing all that through their current near-term enterprise opportunity. The market itself offering up such massive revenue potential for the orchestration side. This is combining different AI workflows. You can offer that on the Google's website alongside synthetic enterprise grade testing for your AI systems. This is a combination of products that nobody else has. So it's not just hype or, this is a really innovative company. And that's why we're looking at LivePerson, not because it is some backwater crappy house on the shitty road out of town. This is the best street and the worst house, which if you just give it like a new lick of paint and put some good people living in there for a while, get the garden looking nice, right, they could take over, right? This is a new revenue stream. And while the biggest opportunity at the minute is orchestration, there's so much, right?
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much to Jamie, everybody. That was great. Thanks so much. That's Jamie's thoughts on the AI growth in LivePerson on their products. A lot of big words used in those sentences, and like just to sum it up for people, he's interested in the growth because it is actually part of their growth story. It's not just a label that you put on your website to try and get people to think your business is doing something when it isn't really yet. In fact, that's one of the services that LivePerson sells to other companies. They get to put that on their business and hype up that they're involved in it, whereas LivePerson's the one that's getting the revenue there. And then because of the, what was the second point?
Adoptions, financials, and innovation. So it's actually called out in earnings, the AI, that growth side of it. The financials, these aren't freebies. These modules bolt on,
because they're paying for it. That's the thing. Sorry, they're paying for it. That was kind of So all these other companies that put the tag on that say AI, it's like, where's the revenue for that going? It goes to companies like LivePerson. So they're the ones that get the money. So it is exciting when you see AI growing around the place and companies struggling to put it into
What's the
use.
biggest problem with AI? It's hallucinating, talking complete garbage sometimes. And if it's doing that to a customer in a critical industry, that's a huge problem. Who's going to save the day?
Yeah, you need to know that when your customer is trying to get in touch with their telecoms company, that they're not going to receive AI generated dick pics in their chat, right? So you have to get a million little AI synthetic customers to come along and really robustly test your system. But not even if you're using AI, they can test human systems and stuff. So there's a product there which I think demonstrates a level of innovation in the customer services space using AI that will help businesses. And I think like applied solutions to communication needs is what LivePerson does. And I think the what I wanted to actually say after this section with you chatting here is that the AI growth part of LivePerson hasn't really been a part of its story. And we've been forecasting this a long time in advance, but in Q1, the total usage of Gen AI product in LivePerson as part of its revenue was 5%. So it's a really small part of LivePerson's business. Then in Q2, it was 17%, which is a massive growth. I mean, it tripled in one quarter. So if we can see huge growth happening there, knowing the previous points that it's based on good products that are innovative, based on a need that the businesses have themselves to actually provide AI to their customers, and based on the fact they get paid for it,
And LivePerson are first to market, and they've got unique selling point in that they come from regulated industries.
Right. So like having had this compliance feature, knowing that you've got a company there that can deliver a product which actually matters on a technical basis, on an innovation and kind of future looking basis, and as well on a compliance basis is huge, right?
And how can you not sell that? Because everybody who deploys an AI solution is going to hit a wall and fail at some point. And if you can just spend a little bit of money with LivePerson and save yourself a massive headache later, that's a very, very attractive proposition.
Yeah, and you can say like, oh, well, what about all of the companies that are competing in the AI space? Is that not eating into LivePerson's product? You can see these really innovative AI chatbots. Well, let's actually think about this for a second, right? LivePerson's an ongoing concern, which only generated 5% of its revenue from AI in the Q1, and it had growth of 630,000 average revenue per customer to 655,000 average revenue per customer as it expanded that AI to 17% of its sales. So it's rapidly growing within that space. But what did the other 95% of its business represent? Well, it represented long-standing customer relationships with top Fortune 500 companies. Like, it expanded expertise across a range, because you've got, like, for instance, in the mobile space, you've got Orange Spain and TalkTalk and Sky and stuff like that. You've got multiple companies, AT&T or T-Mobile, they using the same back-end products to satisfy their customers. So they've got expertise, and then they've got compliance. They've got a rigorous system which actually will not screw you over. But, and this is the thing, if it did screw you over, everything's insured and packed up and working properly with experience to actually deal with this.
Yeah, and so
companies need that.
Companies do need that. And LivePerson, as it happens, currently hiring for a new head of AI, so restructuring the company with a proper focus on AI. And these companies that do anything whatsoever are then looking to hire themselves. So they're hiring compliance officers so that they can check that the systems they're deploying meet their requirements, so that they're all able to get insurance. And all of these are new market opportunities where you could trust LivePerson or its biggest competitor, Salesforce, whose CEO constantly talks about political things, discusses his values rather than creating value. And they don't see where LivePerson's coming, just behind them, because they're not looking in the mirror, and that's where we're sitting.
So there's some really interesting stuff happening. If you look at the growth in their customers, it's relatively low. And on the one hand, you could say something like, I thought this was an AI software as a service business which would have hundreds of thousands of customers signing up every minute if it's that great. And to that, you can say that, well, that doesn't actually understand what LivePerson do. Like, LivePerson are about orchestrating all of the different channels of communication that your customers would want in a way that is the most efficient, so that the customer and the business has the best outcome.
Yeah, so both your workflows meeting their desires, so you get the most efficient outcome.
And to do that, they go into a business and they orchestrate. Like, if you can imagine LivePerson as the guy wearing the tuxedo standing in front of the orchestra, and there's, instead of a violin section, you've got WhatsApp, and instead of the rhythm section, you've got Facebook Messenger, and instead of the cello over there, it's a SMS channel, and all of them have to interact and work with each other perfectly. And you need to then establish a system that can do that and integrate with your existing customer relationship management software. And so they don't have masses and masses of clients, they just have really good ones.
Yeah, and it's true though, there's a kernel of truth there that LivePerson recognizes a criticism, a valid criticism, that their deployment could be quicker, and they're working towards that goal. Yeah. But when they're first to market and they've got a unique selling proposition, that's the flexibility you give them.
Mm-hmm. So as the company progresses from a story of a legacy chatbot which wasn't competitive in a field of a massively expanding AI world, which was the landscape in sort of the earth-shattering 2022s when ChatGPT first kind of made its debut on the big stage, companies were looking at these chatbots and thinking it's a bit clunky and doesn't work well for me, and this is legacy tech. And then LivePerson had a catastrophic price decline over a period of time. Then we got interested in it whenever it started, and it was getting towards that first 1% of AI being integrated into its products, because we could see that the intersection between its legacy business model and the innovation in technology really matched up if they could get it to work well for their customers.
And we knew that new board could actually achieve that.
Well, that was at the trough. You take out the Briar board and you put in this new one that's really pushing towards the success. And what you're looking then is to change legacy into experience, and like experience matters when you're dealing with companies who require compliance and solutions that will work. And if you can go in there and roadmap that success for them and say, our clients typically see this type of performance after a certain time.
That's vision. You can
Yeah.
demonstrate and articulate that vision for their company.
Then you make the sale. And the sale matters a lot to LivePerson, of course. As we said, their average customer revenue is 655 grand and growing. And the need for the services is growing all the time. And the ability to demonstrate that need for people can come in the form of synthetic customers as well. And providing that to people closes a loop for a lot of businesses who think to themselves, am I getting the most out of my customer service? It's like LivePerson come in and demonstrate to you how you're not.
Yes,
from day
and
one.
if you're now on the board deciding about your own company's customer service solutions and LivePerson isn't in your top 3 choices, then you're not doing your job properly. And that's going to open the door when everybody says, well, what do we do when it goes wrong? And they turn around, they look at their competitors, got LivePerson, they've stress tested their system and they already knew what might go wrong and fixed the problem before deployment. Yet you're facing a massive bill and your insurance company is pulling the rug from under you. Then you're going to turn around to that guy and say, why was LivePerson not in my top 3 choices? How come I didn't know these facts? 2 guys on the internet were talking about it on that Wednesday show.
So like in 2022, you had this thing where Bill Gates was saying, I asked it to write a letter to a grieving person, and it was the most emotionally empathetic thing I've ever read, talking about ChatGPT version 1. And then what you have then is everybody thinking, this is going to completely transform communication. And then a few years go by, and then you can go out into the street and you can ask people nowadays, and they say, I don't use ChatGPT because it hallucinates all the time. It's far too narrow-minded about certain topics. It doesn't understand things properly, and it lies.
It's always telling me how much of a nice guy I am.
Yeah.
I've got no idea what it's talking about.
Then the market comes up with this narrative where it says there's an AI bubble happening. And you can feel that that is an expression of a 3 or 4 years of using this product, which has left them only seeing the outcome as a badly written article on their sports team that they read about. And they think AI is the best AI has managed to do is to make it so that I am now on a website that has answered the question and made it so I didn't have to log into ChatGPT and ask it itself what it thinks of my football team's latest signings.
Yeah.
So it really,
Which thinks they're amazing and everything's brilliant.
yeah, and that's the disillusion that people are facing in the world now. And what does that signal to me? And it signals to me that people will be picking up the phone to companies like LivePerson and saying, hey, can you orchestrate this for us so that it's actually a success instead of being a black hole of money that I spend 6 months trying to get some progress towards, but just keep on getting hallucinations and wrong answers. And you can imagine the answers would be terrible. Like someone might go onto some Salesforce website and ask a question, and they might say, oh yeah, the best product for you is LivePerson. You couldn't have that happen if you were Salesforce. And LivePerson
It will be happening.
Yeah, right. So LivePerson has this synthetic customer thing, which is super interesting because you need to stress test.
It's an enterprise grade synthetic layer that'll test before deployment. That's like for some companies that's worth billions.
And in a world where people are scared of AI and what it can do and what interactions you might get from it too, having a company which is a Fortune 500 company be able to say we've had our AI certified and we're really confident because of this industry grade enterprise level checking mechanism.
They've got a compliance checklist. It should be a box on the form when they're doing it. Have you tested this properly? And what does that even mean?
How does it even mean? And then to be able to do that, you need a system, and they've got one. So it's super interesting, and that is the AI growth part of LivePerson, which I think the surprising part for some people watching this right now is that it was only 17% of their business in Q2,
right.
But that was more than 3 times what it was in Q1.
Right.
And here we are looking towards the earnings.
It's new. It's new. And all of a sudden, it's $1 in every $5 nearly is coming in through the door.
Right. So if we can think about it in that way, then where will it be in a year's time? Because of that 630,000 and 655,000 on average revenue per customer, how much of it was before? It was $30,000 of 600,000 was AI.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's going up and up, and it's additive as opposed to subtractive. So it's adding on.
Right.
So we're seeing an expansion in the average revenue.
And this
per
is a
customer.
compounded metric, unlike, say, for example, the debt, which will be met and paid off. And then this is contributing to other financial flexibility, which allows LivePerson to exploit that for innovative growth in these new market-led opportunities.
We live in a world of interdependent systems, whether it's the gold price and NASDAQ dropping simultaneously because of an equilibrium that exists in markets, or whether it's at LivePerson and its products and technology. And we can look at it through the lens of finance. And that's what we've been doing here in the show when we talk about it and we think about the positive future this company will probably deliver for its shareholders, in our opinion, based on how we view its progress. Now, I think LivePerson, the company itself, would love people to talk more about the technical things that it's doing and the technology and products that it has. And the way that we talk about things is obviously through the success and outcomes of those for their customers. And it's an amazing symbiotic system as well, because every time we see success, it's actually based on a back end of like their relationships and the technology they've got and how it takes that time to sell it and that time to build out that relationship and grow that customer.
Yeah, and what a fantastic resource this is for everybody, not just everybody watching it now, but those people later on. So say, for example, LivePerson does a large pre-market move, it gets a lot of attention and eyes on, and people want to know what is the story with LivePerson, or they're going to want to know what are the technical, unique selling points of this business. They're not simply interested in an imbalance due to filings or a squeeze dynamics due to our previous work, which is amazing. But they're going to look at this narrative. What is the advantages to LivePerson in the market that means that this is a real opportunity, not a pump and dump scheme? And it's these sort of things, calling out these sort of parts to the business, to the trade, that makes it so that everybody is welcome in LivePerson. Now, there's been discussion recently about whether or not day traders help or harm a stock's long-term value, but if you're taking it from lows to highs on the chart, if you're doing that multiple times or once, then you're on the same side as us.
Yeah, and if you're out there talking about and invested in the success of LivePerson, then you're helping that company because they've got very few people in the world talking about them. And I think that that could be deemed as a negative, but actually, despite the fact that you've got a legacy company with an established reputation with over 350 or over 300 top companies around the world, that what you've got there isn't just a new startup starting today. You've got
Each
a legacy
customer's paying nearly $1 million
you've
each.
you've got an established business, right? But you can then still say, how early on this road are we? If there is going to be a customer service company that becomes the $1 trillion customer service company, what company is it? And it could be any of them. We're looking at this one and we like it, but it's not brand new. It's one of the reasons why it's struggled up to recently is the same reason that it'll have better longevity and success in the future. So buying into an established brand and business is really intriguing when it's at extreme low prices. So the reason why we talk about it as a really great potential investment is because we're looking at the products and innovations we're doing, and that's what came back to the initial kind of tagline for the company is it's the worst house on the best street. AI is and has been the growth story of the stock market for the last couple of years, and it looks set to continue. And AI is a relatively new part of the business for LivePerson, which is an established 20-year-old business. So when you then take this growth story and you combine it with what was deemed as, and said negatively, legacy, but is actually experienced and established brand value, then what you have is a recipe for massive growth.
Yeah, and then when you elect me to the board and I communicate my fantastic idea about how LivePerson can actually be the brand brain of the biggest companies and the biggest names, we'll add another revenue stream on that'll boost it to $1 quadrillion.
Well, I mean, I do think that I do think in seriousness, there is a communication problem from the humans that work in the past at LivePerson, and that's been helped loads by Sabino coming in. And I think Tony Zingale is one of the best communicators on boards that you can have. He seems to have a way of distilling what he wants to say into a neat package, which is high level, but everybody understands. and there's a big improvement there. But I do still think that there should be a voice in the board which clearly sets out things like this company wants to do well for its shareholders long term, and to be a publicly traded company in the long term, to represent the shareholder value of a cohort of shareholders, which is about 10% of the company, like one of the largest single groups, who has a long-term vision for market participation from the company, should have some representation there, so that not only is the message communicated from the board out, but for the message is communicated from the shareholders in, which I think is a two-way street which needs to exist in any healthy, forward-looking business, especially when going through a transformation process like this.
Yeah, governance doesn't drift on complacency.
Yeah, so
nobody's going to give you anything. You're going to take it.
Yeah, and there's a missing voice in there right now because we're communicating really well, and I've not heard them communicate this. I mean, we're able to communicate the growth story about the AI. We're able to communicate how that impacts revenue. We're able to communicate how it's about innovation.
All of this translates to shareholder value.
And how it translates to shareholder value, but it's not being communicated well enough in the communications.
Which presents this trading opportunity, and which is why you're all so welcome to share in it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good place to kind of wrap up our chat about LivePerson. They have reached the goal, so I'll have to do some LivePerson technical analysis just here, and
I'll
bring us through to the end of the show.
gardening.
Yeah, go back to gardening. How long are we into today's show? This is about 56 minutes, so that's like a 25-minute section there where we chatted stuff through. I think it was good. We did promise people that we would do something like that.
Did you get good value from that section? Hit the like button.
Yeah, it was a goal, and we achieved the goal. If you did get good value from that, hit that like button.
And if you want to thank Rocky, sign up to be a member or upgrade your membership.
And be a part of the team, Parkside Boys and all that. Right? I'll get the technical analysis on LivePerson on the go, and check in with the chat.
Imagine Beyond Meat had us.
Imagine Beyond Meat had us, my goodness.
It'd be at $34 already.
So
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
so if you enjoyed what you're seeing here and that, then another thing that you can do is make clips, and we chatted for a wee while there. You might have found something that was interesting in a kind of 30-second piece or a minute of something that one of us said, and you know what it's like when you're in a conversation yourself. Like, you're you got the front row seat. I mean, I had the front row seat to talking to Jamie there, except that was also my curse, because it was me in the conversation. So I have to listen to it back afterwards to really get an appreciation for what we talked about there. So if you could help me out by making a clip of anything you found interesting during that, I think Jamie and I would both like it. We'd look back afterwards and think, cool, that's good to have some handle on what sentences really landed with people. We are interested in communication. This is a communications company. It's LivePerson. It does orchestration of a company. I think maybe for a minute here, we can just talk about that for just a minute. Orchestration. Taking the different communication channels and bringing them together in a manageable way. Why is that a good thing today? Well, let's face it, everybody's talking about an AI bubble. Do I think an AI bubble is going to negatively impact a business who's only generating a minority of its revenue from AI products and services right now? If there were a bubble, if it all collapsed tomorrow, why would that affect LivePerson? Well, LivePerson's product is like 80% not anything to do with AI as it stands now. However, it's growing lots. So it's kind of a win-win, right? If everything collapsed, LivePerson existed anyway without that. If everything explodes, then LivePerson is growing loads quarter over quarter. So that's a blend that, you know what, I'm not that perturbed by for LivePerson. So it's an orchestration company. It does a lot of stuff that is to do with communicating and bringing all your channels together, and it does obviously involve legacy old school technology like picking up the phone and calling somebody, and it involves cutting edge stuff like generative AI. So that's what LivePerson is, and we like to talk about it as being the worst house on the best street, which is just a kind of an estate agent, real estate type of phrase, whereby if you're looking to invest in a house and you've got 100 houses on the street and they're all more or less the same, but one of them is worth more and one of them is worth less, you buy the cheaper one, you do it up to the same standard as the one that's worth more, you can expect to sell it at the same price. And so it's a great place to be in if you're on the best street. It's all about location, and the product that they're growing into here is one of them. That's the positive side and the future. The current and the recent past, though, has been negative. It's been down. It has been. And the current price of it's $5.95. Markets have just closed 15 minutes ago. I'll get up the... oh, it is extended trading hours. Good. So markets have just closed and it's at it's just below $6. How do I feel about all of this right now? And the basic message is that the split happened over here, and since then the prices have been doing all right. There's the first hurdle is getting past this 10 days. At the end of the week, at the start of next week, come next Monday, we can cross that threshold of 10 days and get the whole delisting thing taken away. That's going to be the first piece of good news on this company. First piece of good news that this company has had for a while that the markets can understand. We've looked at the details of what the news has really said. The headlines have been bad and the underlying detail has been kind of good, but communicating that message to the market hasn't worked, and they've reacted in the way that they often do when a reverse split happens, and they've priced it down. Okay, what typically happens with companies who are distressed, who are doing reverse splits and need to raise money to satisfy debt? They release shares to the market and the stock price tanks more. LivePerson, before doing the reverse split, changed its runway to last to 2029. I don't anticipate them trying to extract value and damaging the stock price down any further themselves. So I think the first hurdle of getting past that first piece of good news is important, and then can see a rise in positivity thereafter, because unlike another company such as Mullen Automotive, when it did a split, it would not dump its own shares for 10 days. It would actually try and buy them to keep them the market so that it would be above $1, so that it would get compliance. And then it would dump the shares and dump more and raise more money because it had no income, and it was a scam. It is a scam, sort of scammy company, in my opinion. When companies do that. But LivePerson's not going to do that. So I anticipate that there'll be positivity there. And then the next bit of good news can come in with earnings. I think the headlines on earnings, again, will be bad, but the guidance in the previous earnings was bad, right, for this upcoming earnings. Like, they told the markets the next earnings will be worse than this. So there is a big question about what's being priced in. Will it be a surprise? I don't think it's a surprise. Even if this number that comes up, that technically this is like surprise, it says sometimes there, and that's not what I meant. I don't think there'll be any surprises. It was foreshadowed, and I think that the surprises could land on the positive side with things like the AI growth story, which is why it's important for us to talk about that today, because that's one of the key things we'll be looking to over the next week. The general kind of feeling of this curving out here would, from an inverted perspective on this chart, look like there's the potential for this to be rolling over. If this was an uptrend up to here and then it started acting like that, then there'd feel like the potential for this to roll over. Now, I'll just flip that back around, which would then look like this, because it'd actually be going up. The key thing for me then initially on this story is to take out the moving average just above price, and to take out the prior highs, which are flat enough here to give you the feeling of the classic sort of wedge feeling, and a nice neckline or a confirmation line on a technical pattern. So that means to say that seeing prices above that could push prices higher. So we'll be looking with keen eyes at sort of 675, something like that, to see how, or maybe I should say 720, but I'm looking up toward these areas and saying, that starts to change the feeling in the story, especially if it's combined with other pieces of good news. If you look at other things, like stocks only go up, all right? Stocks only go up is the joke, and the reason that joke exists, if I put on the monthly chart here, is because, as you can see from this monthly chart, stocks typically go up. You have to go all the way back for a couple of years to find a period where there was downward for a year, you know. And then if you look back even further, you can see stocks only go up. This idea like that, right? So despite the fact that if you'd invested at any time on average in the last however many years, you'd have made money overall, you know, typically most of the time, or most of the time with some patience. People get extremely exuberant in their fear from time to time, and right now is one of those times. And the fear here then would be that this would start to turn around and roll over and drop down in the same way that LivePerson could go up, except what goes up must come down is the general kind of idea that people have. But what goes down, if they don't try and get more money from markets, they don't release more shares onto the market, they don't devalue their own company in some way, and they work hard and they achieve their goals, what goes down comes back up, and as actually is the underlying truth of the long term on stocks, as you can see in those charts when you look at the monthly. So this feeling that this could roll over towards the top side is you know, it's based on a little bit of kind of hopium, you could say, because it is what it is until it is what it isn't. And I'm not blind, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to say that this has not been a downward trend as I draw this downward channel around it. I can see that's there to be seen. What I'm saying, so I'm aware of that, but I'm saying that above this price, then the story changes dramatically, and I'm eagerly looking forward to how the markets receive good news, with the previous earnings having given us guidance that said that the next ones would be worse, the price having dropped in between. The natural question is, has it been priced in? And if we see some surprise stuff coming from the company in their earnings chat, then maybe it gets an extra reason to be positive. And on a chart like this, you know, things start to go insane fairly quickly, because what was once $1 is now $15. So that's my bit more in-depth technical analysis than I was otherwise going to do. Obviously, bullish divergence coming at these lows. Then we had the split. Then we've gone sideways, and there's been a kind of ever so, like, you know, a movement up in the RSI, and that's reflected in these higher lows, which is reflected in the turning around. So the momentum towards the downside is tapered away off, and it might start to even get to the point where we get a move up and the bulls get back in control. The bulls haven't been in control in price action since back in August, and obviously that was interrupted with the fundamental change in how the company was planning on you know, extending its runway. So my feeling is that this is could be forming a base here. I don't think it's supported by internal buying of the company to artificially keep its share price at the price of the split for a while. So that's pretty good, although I obviously will need to talk more about what to look for in detail on those earnings. Hopefully that technical analysis helps people when they're thinking about this one. I don't want to speculate as to what lows it would go down to if it broke this and went lower, and so on, because the long term, you have to go back many years to find history of the price of the company being down towards these lows, and you're looking back to the dot-com period, you know, following the dot-com crash. So how about there is an AI bubble and everything goes to crap, and then we can look at those numbers or something like that. But until such times as that happens, then I'm not going back to the days of the hysteria to find levels that we can use today to talk about price action when you know, that was the dot-com crash and everything like that. Okay, so we'll talk about that in more detail as we go on with the show. So thanks so much for being a part of what we're doing. Let's make sure I've not missed any questions and stuff that came in from the fan funding side of things, and we'll go back to the very start of the show. And a shout out to everybody that did this, by the way. 1,000 Years of Darkness, Sauce, Limpman, Disco Biscuits, XD, Only Shares, cheers for the support. Quick Queenie Jeannie wanted to take a look at Plantier. What's it again? PLTR. Palantir. Ah, yeah, it's doing great. Give us your data. Oh, look at that, double highs. It's kind of like the Nasdaq stock price and all the rest of them. The fear of markets rolling over is high here. As you can see, the fear of markets rolling over is high. Unfortunately, the hype about LivePerson rolling over towards the top side is really low. That's where you get deep value plays, and the other ones where you're buying into things at highs. So there's some thoughts. I'd love to hear your TA. You're welcome. Shout out to all of you that took part in that. Cheers, Lisa, as well. That's quality. And yeah, go on the lads. Cheers, El Jefe and Luke Spears as well. And we got somebody getting a membership gift from Lisa. How cool. What a great show. Leave your comments down below, make some clips, and let me know about what you did, what you thought about this week's show and last week's show, especially in light of the fact that I was calling for a blow-off top, or not blow-off top, a correction in gold, and then it happened, and talking about the relationship of markets and the TA and everything else. So much content, so much to talk about, and I can't wait to do it in the comments of this video with you all. Until next time.